Hi, my name is Angelina from Care to Create, and today I will be interviewing Kendra from North Brooklyn Angels.
Hi, my name is Kendra Chiu, and I am the Executive Director for North Brooklyn Angels.
So, what inspired the creation of North Brooklyn Angels, and what goals did you set out to achieve?
What inspired the creation of North Brooklyn Angels? I'm not one of the co-founders. I came on board about 2 years ago. The organization was founded by a couple of lifelong Greenpointers and North Brooklyn residents who observed the changes over time, especially within the last 20 to 25 years. They saw, this was an area, like a lot of parts of New York City were areas that were essentially not livable. And over time, the process of gentrification started and really shot up, where, local businesses, young families, young professionals were moving in. And that started to change the dynamic of North Brooklyn being an affordable, industrial, blue collar community to, quite frankly, an unaffordable one over time and very quickly. And we have a couple of local folks who saw, these changes are a macro issue, and we invite development and changes to better the overall landscape of North Brooklyn. But what can be done to not render those who don't benefit from these changes, the costs of living, these amenities, what can be done to not render them completely ignored and invisible, which can happen over time? So what the co-founders did, along with a coalition of other local businesses who have also been in the area for decades and also other nonprofits, they formed a coalition to kind of like garner support. Would you be interested in, supporting the development of a volunteer-driven organization that would connect neighbors to help neighbors, if not at the very least, to bring to the attention of newcomers, hey, it's wonderful that you're moving into this, burgeoning community, but there's still like people who've been here for a generation or two who still struggle with economic and food insecurity. So that was the vision of North Brooklyn Angels back in 20. It's been forming for quite a while. We were founded in 2016, incorporated in 2016, and we started providing meals in 2017. And to do this, we had a couple of generous donors and supporters who invested in the mobile soup kitchen truck that you've seen before. And the whole idea was, why don't we connect folks to volunteer? And food was the easiest vehicle.
So, how does your organization address hunger and other needs?
What happened was during the very beginning, and we do this fairly consistently, but during the very beginning, a lot of community organizing was done. We connected with local nonprofits, local housing complexes, NYCHA, other service organizations, just to make sure we were not, duplicating their efforts. And then we also, of course, did our own research. We worked with local elected officials to identify, where are their needs? Where are there folks who, struggle with food insecurity, and how can we go where the need is? So the beauty of what we call a mobile soup kitchen program through the operation of our food truck, and we were lucky to have two trucks and a van now, is we go where the need is. We have identified parts of the community. This took years to do, where, okay, we can station ourselves here, have volunteers provide meals, because we know that this is a pocket where a need is unmet, and also it's practical for us to park our truck in front of it. So it took a lot of community organizing and working with other partners to identify and validate that there is a need here. We don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have our vehicle, we've got hundreds of meals to distribute and provide to the community, and they're not being needs. So it's always kind of like we're always keeping a pulse, and our ability to expand and contract is because of our boots on the ground and paying attention, and also being in, good communication with other local folks, as well as our meal participants who also, will take some of our meals and deliver to homebound folks too.
So, what are some unique challenges that you faced in providing aid and support to those who are in need?
It's not, I wouldn't say they're unique challenges. Every nonprofit struggles with resources. And, I think what's important for folks to understand is even though this is a mission-driven organization where the goal is not to make a profit, the goal is not to, have sales, if you will. That's at the end of the day, it still is a business. We still have, governance and reporting and financial goals we have to meet in order to keep the organization, growing and but also sustainable because we still have, space usage to pay for maintenance, the operation of our vehicles. I think a unique challenge for North Brooklyn Angels is the fact that we are a volunteer-driven organization. We have two full-time staff members, and we have about three part-timers, and we have a couple of consultants that we pay through what we call a 1099 contracting. So ultimately, we rely on volunteers to provide what is now 1,900 meals a week, 7 days a week, and we rely on partners to help us too. So I think even though it is a challenge, it is an opportunity. We always kind of view what are the challenges? What are the opportunities? How can it be a challenge, be an opportunity? We're very fortunate in maintaining a very, very affirming and attractive environment where, the challenge isn't so much of we don't have enough volunteers. We do go through those periods of time in the year, but we have always, what we've done is we've established a welcoming environment, but also, mechanisms where if we do run into a shortage of volunteers because of the holidays or because of COVID exposures, this is the reality that we're living with. We have systems where we've got local folks as backups. So what we have is a challenge, but we've responded to it as this is an opportunity for us to innovate and create systems where we can have the ability for resources. So I think I would say those are the unique challenges that North Brooklyn Angels navigates because we rely on so many volunteers and they drive a lot of logistics. I think I would reference a post we made where in the end of September, there was a big flood. And, New York City was impacted, Brooklyn was impacted, and we had to cancel our meal service for Friday. And the succession of calls that had to be made, we had to cancel senior meals. We had to let our partners at our host site know. And, Sister Victoria outside of Most Holy Trinity stood outside in the umbrella to let folks know who were showing up that the kitchen was flooded. We had to make others, we had to alert quite a number of people. And this is just for one day of service. So I think those would be the unique challenges that we've embraced, but also acknowledge for North Brooklyn Angels. It's a balance of resources and, time sensitivities around them.
So, can you share a memorable success story that or impact that your organization has had on individuals or the community?
Absolutely. I would say, what's important to reiterate is North Brooklyn Angels, even though we operate a very successful emergency food operation, we're not a food program. We are a volunteer-driven organization that looks to build community. And I would say I can highlight two success, like one micro success and like another kind of like launch beyond the provision of food. What we do is about 2.5 years ago, after we've established our footprint in the provision of food, what we did was, in listening to our partners and listening to the very families that we feed, we identified another need that we could provide because we are North Brooklyn Angels in a North Brooklyn community where we have volunteers. So what we started doing is we started partnering with local organizations, most notably the Brooklyn Hospital's Women, Infants, and Children program in Williamsburg. And this program, it's a federally funded organization. It's all throughout 50 states. What they do is they work with expectant and new families, and they work with them to prevent infant mortality, and also, they promote early childhood development through the provision of classes, breastfeeding classes, nutrition education, the facilitation of referrals to other, medical and social services for these young and new families. So what they don't provide are material essentials on a regular basis, like diapers, clothing, baby bottles, breastfeeding pumps, all the things that are really important to raising, a young child. So what we did was, about 2.5 years ago, our now director of partnerships started kind of community organizing again. And then what we've had is now a successful new program called the Angel Babies Project, where 3 times a year, we invite the community. Hey, you know us, we're North Brooklyn Angels. We operate a mobile soup kitchen program, but we're a volunteer-driven organization, and we're always looking to keep community building. So what we do is 2 to 3 times a year, we invite the community to donate their baby essentials, beautiful children's clothing, strollers, sleep sacks, supplies. And these are gently used items that they don't need anymore. And we've got a lot of young families moving into North Brooklyn. And what we do is 2 to 3 times a year, we have volunteers collect all of these items. And then we have about a week, 2 weeks of sorting tens of thousands of these donated items, that these are high value items. And then we organize a big giveaway event in partnership with the Brooklyn Hospital's WIC program. And we have, a big giveaway. We just had one last Thursday where about 300 families came. And then the beauty of this, project is that these are high value items that are essential items, and they are placed into the hands of those who need it the most. So I think this is another successful program that highlights the example of community building where resources, are going into the hands of those who need it the most, but they're also these are all done by volunteers. Volunteers sort through these tens of thousands. They staff this event. We had over 50 volunteers at our event alone last week, and we needed that volume. So I would highlight that as a successful on-ramp and a successful permanent program of North Brooklyn Angels, in addition to our 1,900 meals a week.
So how can young people get involved and support the work of North Brooklyn Angels?
I would say this is something that we've been working on ever since I've gotten involved. We have a couple of strategic goals. In this past year, it was the expansion into Bushwick. It was the sustainability of angel babies, and it was also opening up, a weekend volunteer opportunity. During the pandemic, we had a lot of volunteers that were furloughed, laid off, and we also had a lot of need in the area. So we were able to match the need with a much larger volume of volunteers. But now that folks are returning to work, it's been a priority of ours to have a consistent weekend program. So now we have Sunday breakfast in Greenpoint. So this is a new goal for us in 2024, to have a consistent flow of young people to volunteer with us. There are challenges, of course. We operate Department of Health certified kitchen programs, and there are always safety issues that we have to contend with. We did implement a new policy in writing that we respond to with parents early in 2023, where we invite parents to volunteer a couple of times on their own, just to familiarize themselves with the physical settings of both kitchens. And then on a case-by-case basis, we invite them to bring, their child or their children in to volunteer with us, because they know where their children would be helpful. They know where their children would be safe. And then for unaccompanied minors, if their children have volunteered with us enough, we have consent forms and waivers, like permission slips as well. What we're now working on is, a program, an opportunity for younger children to volunteer with us, because middle school and teenagers, we have less concerns about, but, we also have to factor in, we have a lot of parents who want to have children become more civic minded at much earlier ages. 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have to also think about what's the balance between, having them involved as families, but also making sure that there's value being provided because there's dexterity issues, there's also safety issues too with young children. So that's something we're exploring. And, something that could potentially be in the pipeline is a monthly family baking opportunity on the weekends where we can have a couple of families with their young children bake for us. I would say my advice for young people who are looking to volunteer for a nonprofit is, it's cold calling is always, a challenge, cold emailing. Most of the time you'll get ignored or, people are too busy to kind of pay attention to a generation who wants to start giving at an earlier age. I would say just be persistent and have your parents also be involved in it, but also there's always someone who knows someone. Your mom was really good at this because, she called me once or twice and she said, just Google my daughter. She has a track record. And I think, we make these connections that are called emotional deposits. And in doing that and having a phone conversation with your mother, she was able to get my attention to also open my eyes a little bit more about what are opportunities that we can provide on a more consistent basis. So I would say be persistent, but also be very sensitive and understanding that when, if you are ignored, it's not because people are rolling their eyes at young people, it's because everyone's so busy, operating a nonprofit, there's always it's an endless amount of things to do, but being a friendly and persistent face, but also recognizing that this might not be a match for this program and kind of retreating is always helpful too. So I think, be persistent, but also, identify ways in which you can be a match, but also rely on your parents too, to kind of foster that connection.
What are the key programs or initiatives that your organization offers to assist those experiencing basic need insecurity?
So what we do is because we're not a direct service organization. We're not looking to have direct, immediate, like long-term impact on the residents we serve. We are a connecting organization. So that's why we have partnerships with housing advocates, medical providers, mental health and addiction treatment providers as well. This is what this coalition is built around. So what we do is we use food and angel babies as a connecting vehicle. So this way, folks who come to us for meals on a regular basis, they view us as we're a safe, friendly organization of volunteers. I can now ask if I have a need beyond, an emergency food need, I can actually ask a question. I won't be as intimidated. So I'll give you one example. We also have, a growing number of older folks who are becoming more homebound. And sometimes when they come to us for meals, that's that's their ability to step outside the house, to grab a meal that they need, but also to greet and have a conversation with other folks waiting on the line, but also our smiling volunteers. So I'll give you an example of how we meet the needs of those who experience something beyond food insecurity. So this is just one example. We have, a local senior guy who just turned 80 in April. He's been coming to us for meals for the past 4 or 5 years. We know bits and pieces of his story. We don't pry, but we also invite folks to feel safe to share their stories with us. So the past couple of months, he's had other complications with his benefits because he's a senior citizen. He's also a war veteran, which we didn't know. So he sat down with me and he laid out, I'm having issues with my cell phone service and also my food stamps. What can you do to help me with this? Not being a social worker myself, but having worked in a direct service organization before, what I did was I listened to his needs and then I connected him with the programs who could help him. And I also connected him with Assembly Member Gallagher's office because he is a constituent of hers and they have constituent services where this is what they're meant to do. They're meant to help their constituents. But he didn't think of, walking over to his elected official's office. But because I emailed, the director of constituent services, hey, can you help this person? She was absolutely, I can help them with XYZ. Tell them to stop by between these hours. So because of that emotional, like essentially pass through, because he trusts North Brooklyn Angels, he feels safe to walk over to the district office and see another friendly face. He had his needs met beyond the day-to-day coming by for food. And this is just one example. We're able to broker these referrals and connections to the experts. We now have a migrant crisis where, during the height of it, when we had the hotel that's a 4-minute walk away from our community kitchen at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, what we did was we essentially worked with some of our volunteers who have connections to other organizations that provide, immigration support. So what we do is we don't claim to be the experts. We connect them to expert resources that are within walking or commuting distance.
I think it's beautiful that you not only are giving back to and giving to others, but that they feel safe enough to come to you should they ever need anything else.
Yes, so we're here exactly to your point. It's about feeling safe and affirmed and not intimidated because, experiencing food insecurity and living in a homeless shelter can be very, stigmatizing. What we do is we remove that element of shame where we provide a dignified meal and a smile on our face. So because of that, doors are always going to get slammed in our faces, but the very least we can do is, encourage them to, try this person because we have a relationship with this person.
So, as you just said, you work with a lot of different organizations to help other people. So like what are a few other ways that you maybe collaborate with other organizations or community partners to maximize your impact?
Absolutely. So we maximize our impact. So some of those organizations I mentioned, like we got Churches United for Fair Housing, St. Nick's Alliance. They're both our housing partners. We have obviously the Brooklyn Hospitals Women, Infants, and Children program. When we don't have an event underway within a matter of weeks, we do get DMs. We do get emails about, hi, I'm in need of a stroller or diapers. What we do is, again, we refer. So these are our direct service provider partners. We also rely on a lot of partners as it relates to in-kind donations. So we have a great partnership with the local Trader Joe's where we rescue food that otherwise would have been composted. So we are able to direct, this is food that is near the sell-by date, which is still safe for consumption. But as a seller, you can't sell beyond that date. It's just illegal to. However, everyone knows the FDA has very conservative, deadlines for food safety. So they're allowed to partner with an organization like us to accept these donated food items for free and not sell them, but give them directly to our community members. So this way, we now have the ability where we don't provide just meals, we can provide some perishable, shelf-stable grocery items. We also have local partners who donate to us, who donate, funding to us, who also connect us to other potential funders as well. We have local folks who have, groups that they can volunteer with us on a regular basis. We have like 1 or 2 local businesses who have the ability within their organization to volunteer with us either once every other month, once a year. We welcome those because they, as an organization, can give back, even if it's 1 day or twice a week or twice a month. And we also have local smaller businesses where we rely on them for their food. In addition to Trader Joe's, which is like a big behemoth supermarket, we have local bakeries where we rely on them for bread donations because we include bread in all of our meals.
What are the most pressing needs of the community that you serve, and how do you prioritize addressing?
The pressing needs of the community, they've evolved over time. Food is always a really big need. We have, food insecurity is always like an immediate need. That's why, there are emergency food programs everywhere. I would say food insecurity continues to be an immediate need that we're fortunately equipped to respond to. Just to give you an example, during the height of the pandemic, we were at 3,000 meals a week. You know, like weeks before the pandemic, we were at 1,000 meals a week. But because of our ability to shake the trees, fundraise, do outreach, saying, hey, our lines are expanding, our lines are growing longer. Can you help us? Can you help us purchase more food? Can you help us, by volunteering more of your hours? Can you tell more people to come volunteer? So our ability to expand and contract, makes us very nimble. So after folks, returned to work and the pandemic subsided and was stabilized, for about a year in 2022, we were at 1,500 meals a week. So this allowed us to identify abilities to expand further into Bushwick, as an example, because we don't want to keep our meals like stagnant. We also want to make sure that we're not missing a need locally. However, with the migrant crisis, and you know what, a lot of folks are experiencing challenges with inflation. We're now, we started watching the numbers creep up. We went from 1,500 meals a week to now we're about 1,900 meals a week. So we're able to kind of like expand and contract. So I would say food insecurity remains the most urgent pressing need. And another like near immediate need is, we're definitely observing more of an aging population because, we've been feeding these folks for the past 6, 7 years. And a lot of them we're seeing they're struggling with more mobility issues. The pandemic took a big hit on them because they're experiencing more not just health challenges, but mental health challenges as well. So I think this is where, calling upon our elected officials and other service providers to pay attention to, we've got an aging community here, and their struggles are in addition to, their food insecurity struggles as well. So I think what the best we can do is kind of monitor it and listen to these stories and, track these numbers of seniors that we're serving as well.
What advice would you give to younger people that are interested in starting their own non-for-profit or making just any difference in the community?
So I've worked and volunteered in the nonprofit industry my entire career. And if you asked me that question like 15 years ago, I would say follow your passion, just keep going at it. I wouldn't change that. I think in order to thrive in the nonprofit world, you have to have a passion for giving and helping others. This is a helping profession. However, I would say, I would kind of counterbalance that advice with follow your curiosity because, when you're always curious, you're always identifying ways to pivot and not reinvent the wheel, but also facilitate more connections. One of my mentors in my previous job, she was the co-founder of what is now a thriving organization. Upon her retirement, I interviewed her for a piece for Nonprofit Press, and she had really good advice. She said, in her generation of when she founded her nonprofit in the 80s, there was less red tape. There was less, things you had to kind of like navigate, if you will. So in the 80s and the 90s, it was about creation. There were fewer rules. Rules are very important for safety, but, the advice I would give to younger folks is operating a nonprofit is a lot of it is about navigating those rules and be prepared for that. And I would say, you cannot do things on your own. The very fortunate thing is we have a wonderful board at North Brooklyn Angels. I would say rely on your nonprofit board members, find mentors to help you kind of counterbalance this passion that you have for giving with real practical needs. Having, tax returns done at the end of the year, having gift letters provided to your donors, making payroll. So I would say that would be my advice. Never stop being curious. Always remember, where your passion comes from, but also find good people and stick with them and rely on them for support and advice. Find mentors.
So, what role do your volunteers play in the day-to-day operations of North Brooklyn Angels?
Hold on, I'm giving a phone call. Let me decline it. Okay, start over.
I have 10 minutes, so I can just send you like another Zoom link if you.
Sure. Why don't, since we have 10 minutes, I can do one more question probably. Go ahead.
So, what role do volunteers play in the day-to-day operations of North Brooklyn Angels?
They are they're the heartbeat of our organization. The provision of 1,900 meals a week alone through our mobile soup kitchen program, if we don't have any of them, it just doesn't happen. None of this happens without our volunteers. We have a wonderful kitchen manager, Anjali, who is able to provide an environment, but also maintain, food service operation. But we rely on, in any given day, we have maybe 7 to 8 volunteers to package hundreds of these meals. And then we have, a subset of volunteers who drive these meals over to our points in the community. And then if we're using the truck, which is now like 4 to 5 days a week, we have another cohort of volunteers who played on the truck, and also distribute these meals in the community. So they are our pulse, they're our heartbeat, and this does not happen without our volunteers.
What would be the most rewarding aspect of working with North Brooklyn Angels?
In addition to the ability to provide for our meal participants and obviously the families who attend Angel Babies events, it's watching. Community building is between volunteers and our meal participants, but also within our volunteer community. The beauty of what's most rewarding is like hearing the stories of everyone, not just the folks that we serve, but our volunteers. On any given day, we will have retired folks who have been in this community since the 60s or their entire lives. And they get to work side by side with, sometimes a teenager who, otherwise wouldn't have these kinds of conversations, or, a big tech person who wanted to come out of their homes because they don't want to be isolated. Or, we've got lots of, stay-at-home parents who come and give a little bit of their time or a lot of their time, like one of our board members. So I think the diversity, but also, the fact that they're in this, space where they have one common goal, they want to give back, they want to spend a little bit of their time to give back. I think that's the most rewarding, witnessing this community being built among our volunteers and also with our meal participants is pretty cool.
What are some of the long-term goals or visions that your organization has for the future?
I would say the ability to innovate is one of our goals. North Brooklyn Angels is a very hyper local organization. Our focus is on the neighborhoods of Williamsburg, Greenpoint, and Bushwick. We don't have goals to franchise or expand beyond those neighborhoods. Our, long-term goal is to serve as a model. This is a model where we can provide training, advice, mentorship to any community where there's an imbalance of resources because of gentrification. This is the model that can be replicated in Harlem, in Long Island City, Jackson Heights, Pittsburgh, as an example. So I would say, for us as internally as an organization, our long-term goal is always to continue to, pay attention to the diversifying needs of our community and making sure that they're a match for North Brooklyn Angels. I mentioned an aging population as one of them. That's something for us to pay attention to, but also what can we have volunteers do to kind of respond to that? And then a really long-term goal is for there to be enough of an appetite in other communities, either New York City or more nationally, where, hey, North Brooklyn Angels has a volunteer-driven organization where they have over 500 volunteers a year in and out, and they can provide, meals. What's their method and how can we learn from them where we can create our own model, our own organization to mobilize volunteers and partners to do this very similar work.
How do you ensure sustainability and continued support in your programs and your initiatives?
So, our board members and we wear a lot of different hats. And, At the end of the day, we are looking to make sure our volunteers, we always have a steady flow of volunteers. We want to make sure volunteers feel appreciated. And we're always looking for funding. So we're always fundraising. Anytime we have a corporate group volunteer with us, we maintain relationships with them. So this way they can think of us either towards their end of year giving, or when we have a big event, a fundraising event where we can have them sponsor. So I think because we're always looking to diversify our ability to fundraise, that, that's really our ability to sustain. And we have an active board that helps us with that too. I think I'm about to get knocked off. If you want to send me another link, definitely feel free to. I'm going to leave this one.
Um, oh, so what would be effective strategies for fundraising and for securing support, especially if you're starting out with very few resources?
If you're starting out with very few resources, I would say tap into your network, because there's always someone who knows someone. It took several years for North Brooklyn Angels to be founded. And, you want to go about it that way too. Like too fast, what is it? There's too big to fail. You're gonna edit this out. Let me think about this out loud. There's a too fast. Okay, anyway, let me start over. Okay. I would say tap into your network, because like you form relationships over time. It's always easy to make an impression, but cultivating relationships take time. Sending, sending a note like of gratitude for something that, they did for you, making sure that they remember you, like extending the impression is always important. But I would also say, like, when it comes to tapping into your network, we have board members, and board members, their role is to tap into their networks, either to fundraise on our behalf or donate themselves or have their companies donate because they're on our board. This past year, after the pandemic stabilized, we've started seeing, individual giving kind of peel back because the emergency is over. Donors, individual givers respond to crisis, very rightfully so. And our ability to provide 3,000 meals a week during the height of the pandemic is because we just saw like a rush of donations to emergency food programs. But now we've got, competing crises. We've got the war in Ukraine. We've got Israel. So we have had donors understandably say, you know what, unfortunately, I have to take a step back from giving to North Brooklyn Angels because I'm, giving my funds elsewhere. My gifts are being directed elsewhere. I'm trying the best that we can. We're getting those kinds of messages. So what we say is totally understand, hopefully we can pick up a rhythm back in 2024, even at like a smaller level. So I think we always want to make sure that we maintain these relationships, not just because they're giving us funding, but because they're our core supporters. So as an example, we had our big Thanksgiving campaign, and you were a part of that as well. Because last year when we had Thanksgiving, we struggled a little bit more with individual gifts because the pandemic had pretty much, slowed down and subsided, and money was being directed elsewhere by individual donors. So this year, what we did was, why don't we try a couple of different other fundraising, experiments, if you will. So what we did was we invited local bars and restaurants to post up a flyer of our Venmo QR code, and then we'd give them a shout out on social media. And we got a couple of, donations through that route too, by involving, local bars and restaurants to just encourage their patrons while they're having a beer or having a dinner to scan, our QR code with so they can help support the distribution of 1,000 frozen turkeys, 600 sit-down meals. So I think this is how we, always thinking about ways to experiment while also nurturing and maintaining relationships with especially our institutional donors, but also always keeping an eye out for private foundation grants as well.
So I myself have visited different councilmen's offices and different city and private agencies. And I've noticed that adults are at times less willing to give their resources or just meet with a younger person because we are younger, and even if the cause is like a charitable one, it's a little bit more difficult to meet with people that are able to give you these resources. So would you have any advice for how to get adults with access to such resources to be able to engage with younger people?
By resources, do you mean, let me know what you mean by resources first.
So I'm sorry, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Um, I have to save our last, here we go. There we go. My computer is
Take your time.
okay. So by resources, I mean like both funding and for volunteers, like maybe that they're able to show like, oh, here, this is a not-for-profit. Maybe can you go volunteer there? Maybe could you donate some time? Maybe could you donate money? Just um, or even like if we are having, let's say, an event, right, where like we're having a Christmas event where you're giving toys out. How do you get maybe somebody else to say like, oh, we're gonna donate all of like maybe some toys or food, different things like uh that would be able to help the not-for-profit as a
Yeah.
whole.
I totally understand. I mean, it's tough. I would say as it relates to resources, cold calls and cold outreach is tough for anyone. I don't think it's specific to you being a younger person. Um, I think I think as it relates to volunteer opportunities, like I'll be very like frank with you, it's easy to get eye rolls, especially from a kid. I think it also depends on the generation of the folks who are receiving your outreach too. I think I would kind of like tap back into like my previous advice, you know, being persistent and following up. I don't think, young people, like even when I was your age, I don't think people understand the value of that, like a friendly follow-up of, hey, just following up on this. I really appreciate your time, but I also understand if this is just not a good match. I think following up, I'm telling like my cousin when she's applying for jobs, like if a job post is still available in a few weeks, doesn't hurt to follow up. The worst they can say is no. Are you getting ignored or are you being told no?
So it depends on the situation. At times it's a no, and I completely understand that. If you there's a lot of different organizations. You have other places that you may want to put your resources, other places that you may want to put time
Right.
or funds, right? So
Mhm.
I completely understand that if you don't have the time or resources to donate to like my not-for-profit, for example, um, at times it's that you don't like get follow-up emails. It's just that you don't really get like a reply back, and it's those times that you send one email or letter, something that says just to follow up, as you had said.
Mhm.
And I think that it's definitely something that I've learned over time. You have to be able to follow through and keep, even if you don't get a reply, it's important to just kindly follow up with that person.
Yeah. Yeah, for the most part, like we get like dozens of emails a day from our varying accounts, and we try our best not to ignore emails, even if it's a polite rejection, to your point. I would say like, rejection is inevitable. It builds resilience for us as well. And like I'm kind of glad that you're experiencing this at a younger age. But anytime we get the door kind of like, closed on us, even as, as a nonprofit, we said, well, how about next year? Could you think about us next year? And then, I think this way you can even say, we'll follow up with you next year, not as a threat, but as like something for them to think about. Okay, this kid's very tenacious and, we admire their moxie. But I think this is also where, you know, knowing who your network is, and tapping into, hey, do you know someone who knows someone here? That's also another helpful mechanism. But it is, tapping into your network or your mom's network as well. Or even like now you have a connection with me, like, if you have a curiosity about something, the most I could say is yes or no. I'd be happy to, like, send an email on your behalf. Very happy to. Or no, I'm sorry, I don't know anyone at this organization. So I think tapping into your network, but also, nurturing those core relationships of your connectors. And I think I could see you becoming a connector because of your own persistence. And, it's almost like you've done a survey of, the responses that you would typically receive, and, keep track of those responses. Like, I tried this person. This is, what we call client relations management or customer relations management, and kind of keeping a pulse of that over time. It's like, we have one of our co-founders, he's a pastor, and when he started out, he went store by store locally to organize just to get like, a couple of dollars to provide a Thanksgiving dinner. This was years ago. And for the most part, everyone, even if it was like 20 bucks, this is the most I could do. Getting in, being physically present also does help when you show them the stuff that you're looking to do. It can be very intimidating, but the more you do it, the less intimidating it is. But he tells me the story, and he remembered this one business who just absolutely refused to give anything. And then every year he thinks about that business. And I think to your point, being ignored, it does leave an impression. Um, but also, the best you can do is just like be persistent, but very friendly about it.
So those were all my questions, and I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to interview you and for allowing me to meet with you to create this informative video. I really did enjoy speaking with you, and I enjoyed getting your advice on all these different topics and learning more about North Brooklyn Angels and how the organization works as a whole, you know? So I just want to say thank you so much for that.
No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad you emailed us like about a year ago and your mom followed up on your behalf. I think that's what really got our attention. And, I would say keep at it, as a young person who's doing quite a lot for the community. And also, like, you've got school and other like piano lessons you mentioned. Just, it sounds like you've got like a wonderful supportive family and set of parents. And, you've got the best friend that you co-founded the nonprofit with. you know, Seeds take time to grow. And I think that's what you're doing. You're not burning yourself out in the process. So I think that's also really important and something that we admire about you too.
Thank you.